Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Her Career, Her Way. Thanks so much for joining me. Her Career, Her Way is a podcast all about empowering ambitious individuals by giving them the tools, having honest conversations about just navigating the chaos of building one's career in their 20s. And as a 20-year-old, it is tough, so you're not alone. So for today's episode, I just wanted to start off with a little bit of a story. So I was in my second week of my internship this summer. Like many of us, your mentor kind of guides you through a task or something. Mine was Excel, and she guided me for about, 20 minutes telling me what to do, where to click, whatever. And then later on in the day, or maybe it was the next day, I had to do the task. And I had taken notes, I had nodded along, and I genuinely thought that I understood what I was supposed to do. But when I actually sat down to do it, I was at a complete blank. Like I felt like I had never learned this before. I felt that I didn't even know what Excel was. And it was an awful feeling. I thought, you have a choice. Do I fake it and pretend to know? But that's never good because you actually need to know what you're doing. Or you ask it, that brought a little bit of shame to me. I mean, I was just taught this. I took notes, but for some reason, I still don't understand how to do it. And I don't know if this resonates for you, if you've ever been taught something and you just feel like you just don't understand it and you don't understand why you can't recall it. And I was also thinking, like, how does everybody else just remember things? I feel like my other intern friends, they just knew what to do on their Excels or whatever. Or maybe not. Maybe that was a preconception that I thought. I mean, I feel like we always think other people know what they're doing, but they never actually do, which is a whole nother topic in itself. But later I realized that kind of those interns or those people, whoever it is, aren't smarter than me. They just have better learning strategies. And that was the first big lesson that I learned. And it was the moment that changed everything for me because I realized that it's not about intelligence or memory. It's about the methods of how you learn and how to retain information. And so this leads me in today's episode where we're going to go through how to learn faster, how to remember things for longer, and also how to build skills for your career that actually stick. And so I feel like we hear it all the time, build your hard skills, build your soft skills, but how do you actually learn those skills and how do you actually retain them so that you can put them in your resume and you actually can do them or you can apply it to a job and actually fulfill it, not just say you can. And so today I'm going to go through 3 simple science-backed skills where you're going to be able to learn faster, retain the information for longer, and apply what you learn towards your career, university, or whatever you're doing. So let's get into it. I wanted to go into a little bit of a hot take, which at Her Career, Her Way, I love to do this. And so I want to talk about the lie that we've all been told. And I'm sure you've heard of it about the learning styles. Are you a visual learner? Are you an audio learner? Are you a kinesthetic learner? And I feel like we take quizzes to find out what we are, and then we try to apply it. If you're a visual learner, you should see things visually to learn. You should map it out. Or if you're an auditory learner, you should just listen to things, and that's how you're going to learn. And kinesthetic, you need to experience it. You need to touch it. You need to feel it, whatever it is. I've taken the quiz, as maybe many of you have, and I found out that I was mainly a visual learner. And so I would kind of, try to use my preferred learning style to learn. However, I felt like I just wasn't working for some reason. I still wasn't able to learn faster or retain information for longer, and I was getting really frustrated. And then I found that psychologists Steinberg and Ride actually show that matching your learning style doesn't actually improve your learning. And so I thought that was really interesting because it kind of broke me out of the box. Like, I don't have to stick in just the visual way of learning things. I can use my other senses. And honestly, you probably should because you're confining yourself to one style of learning where you haven't even experimented others just because this quiz told you that this was how you learn better to perform better, even though there's zero evidence towards that. And so here's what actually matters for learning, which is interest. You learn faster when you actually care. 2 is attention. You learn better when you can focus on something. And 3 is background knowledge. You learn better when you can connect ideas that you already knew. And so you don't have to confine yourself to a visual learner or an auditory learner or a kinesthetic learner, whatever it might be. You're just a human learner. Your brain is designed to adapt when it's challenged. And so here's why this matters, is because your boss won't tailor information to your preferred learning style. They're just going to give you something and you're going to have to learn it. Industry knowledge also comes from a variety of platforms. It might be articles or podcasts or I don't know, even just talking to one another. And so you can't really tailor your preferred learning style to your learning all the time. You're going to have to remain flexible. And so high performers aren't limited to how information comes in. They extract value from any source. So I'm going to say that again. High performers aren't limited to how information comes in. They extract value from any source. Okay, so now that we've gotten into that learning styles don't really improve your performance, let's get into how your brain actually takes in new information. And so Huberman, a neuroscientist and a professor at Stanford, talks about this idea of neuroplasticity. And so basically, without getting too scientific, because I'm not a science girly, it's basically that your brain literally changes when it's learning. And your synapses are either strengthening or weakening as you build those skills as well. And when you're learning, you're honestly just fighting the urge to not forget, because your brain really only keeps in information that it thinks is important. And so the key to actually learning is having attention, effort, and repetition. And so the real skill isn't really memorizing things faster. It's about kind of teaching your brain what's worth keeping. And so now we're going to get into the strategies. Strategy number 1 is active recall. And so I don't know if you've ever been in this position, but I definitely have. And I've been sitting in a lecture and I've been taking my notes. My professor has been going on and on about this concept and topic and whatever it might be. But once I shut that laptop, I swear to you, I can't recall a single thing. And it is so frustrating because you're like, I just spent an hour taking notes and what do you mean? What do you mean I can't remember anything? That's crazy. But what I learned was that because I wasn't actively recalling what I had just learned, I couldn't get anything into my brain. And also I was kind of mindlessly taking notes, which didn't really help because I wasn't putting in the effort. I wasn't focusing and I wasn't really repeating that knowledge by actively recalling, which is the 3 things that actually matter. And so when you test yourself, it actually sends error signals to your brain to lock this in because you don't remember it. And basically, testing exposes what you don't already know, which then strengthens your memory when you actually do recall them in the future. And studies on med students have actually proven that self-testing improves your learning by 50% compared to just kind of rereading your notes, which is crazy. So that is the impact of actively recalling. And this is kind of how you can apply it. So when you're in class, kind of close your notes and ask yourself, what are the main concepts that I just learned? And this could be like right after class, or it can be kind of in that little break that you get if your professor is nice enough. Or if you kind of are in a job, at the end of your day or at the lunch break, take 5 minutes to go through what you actually did, what you actually learned that day. And that's how you can kind of cement those concepts into your brain because you're using that repetition. And a little bonus is kind of quiz yourself before learning. If you've seen the concept a little bit, think of what do you already know? And then when you're focusing on what you don't learn, then you already have some more information to go back on and to focus on when your professor is talking about that concept about, I don't know, a beta or amortization. And you're like, that's what I don't know. That's what I need to focus on now. And so once I started doing this, I stopped kind of just hearing information, but I started owning it. Okay, so now we're going to move on to strategy 2, which is spacing it out and mixing it up. And I have a little confession to make because I have been the queen of finishing tasks. I've powered through one topic, one task, whatever it might be, one module, start to finish, no breaks, no distractions. I had to finish that right then and there. And it's a lot of pressure. And honestly, you get burned out so easily that way. And so when I realized about spacing and mixing, it changed the game. It changed the game. And so I recently listened to a podcast where Peter Brown, the author of Make It Stick, was talking about spacing and mixing. And that's where I got these strategies from. And so basically spacing helps to fight forgetting information, and mixing it up forces your brain to make those deeper connections so that you can kind of recognize the patterns and then connect them to learn better and retain information longer. And so the thing is that if you think it's hard when you're learning a concept, you're actually probably learning. And I know that's not easy because we never like to really do hard things. I mean, it's easier to take the easy way out, let's be honest. And doing the hard things feel daunting, feel kind of like a weight on you, can feel like immense pressure, and you don't want to do it. But the fact is that if you want to learn better, you're going to accept that it might feel hard at first. And that's okay, because hard things can become easier if you repeat them enough. Let me say that again. Hard things can become easier if you repeat them enough. And also, when you're doing the hard things, that's where growth lies. You're stepping up, you're leveling up. Because if you stay stagnant all the time, you're not going to go anywhere. So you have to do the hard things sometimes. It's okay. So when I tried this technique out of spacing and mixing, it definitely felt slower. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just want to speed it up. I want to power through it. I want to finish this task so I can get onto another task. But when I actually did it, I found out that I remembered more, which is crazy. And I also think it's funny that sometimes we overestimate how much we actually know, which is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And so we think we know so much, and we are, taking our notes, we're summarizing whatever we're doing, and we're like, oh yeah, I know everything. But actually, when you take a step back and you try to recall this information, you realize that you don't actually know as much as you think. And so basically, math studying is just an illusion of feeling productive. And really, you're not being productive. And I can't tell you how many times I have read an article or I have taken notes on my lecture. And once I shut that book and I do another task, I realize that I can't even recall what that article title was. And I can't even recall kind of what concepts I learned. I just don't understand. And you think that by cramming it all into your brain, late night study sessions or whatever that is that you're actually learning, but you're not. And so kind of instead of doing that, try to spread it out a little bit, do 30 minutes of one topic like private equity or something, and then spend another 20 minutes researching kind of marketing or whatever the next skill is, and then review what your private equity lecture was or whatever the first thing you were doing and see how that feels. I guarantee you'll feel a little bit less burnt out on the topic because you're not just focusing on that singular thing. You can actually go do another thing, give your brain a little bit of relaxation, and then come back to it a bit later. Because each time you come back to something, your brain has to retrieve it, and that's what makes it stick. So space it out and mix it up. And the third strategy and the last strategy is all about rest. And this might seem a little bit counterintuitive because you're like, what do you mean rest? I have to learn this skill. Don't tell me to rest. And I've definitely been there. And I've definitely talked about this a lot in my perfectionist episode and probably another year around the sun of how I have struggled a lot with rest. I mean, it just feels so unproductive to me. But this is where we are going to reframe it because rest is so important towards your learning. And honestly, it helps you focus as well. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a story because the first time I tried meditating and mindfulness, oh my gosh, it was so boring to me. And I hate sitting still. I mean, ask any of my friends, it is really hard for me to just sit in a position for an elongated time and just sit there. And they always say the hardest things for yourself is probably the things that you need most, but it is so difficult for me. However, when you actually take the rest, you realize that your attention and your focus is so much more on point. You're like razor focused. You are locked in. And I think it's crazy because when I actually took those 5 minutes to not do anything, to just kind of stare off into the distance, and I mean nothing, no scrolling, no kind of watching a movie, no, absolutely doing nothing, and then going back to the task, I was just so much more focused. I mean, I didn't need to go on my phone for 3 minutes and scroll between whatever task I was doing. I was just locked in. And I think this shows the importance of rest. And so here's the science behind it. So Huberman and Suzuki say that when you sleep and when you rest, your brain literally consolidates what you have learned. And most of this effect actually happens on the first night. So when you've learned something from that day, it's so important to get a good night's rest that night because that is the most important night where your brain actually retains that information. It's called the first night effect. And also when you're more well rested, you learn things twice as fast. So Sleep is definitely important because when you sleep, your brain is literally replaying in its mind what it's learned. It's processing things. I mean, that's literally what we do when we're dreaming. We are processing things. Like hitting the save button on your mental file that just retains it. It swoops it in. You're actually learning things. And so definitely don't skimp out on strategy number 3 because sleep is so, so important. I really firmly believe that it is the foundation to learning. So I know I've just dumped a whole lot of information on you guys. So we're going to take a quick little break and just give a little rest. See what I did there? Strategy number 3. But definitely come back because I have a lot more juicy stuff to talk about in the next section. Before I kind of recap all the strategies that we've just talked about, I'm going to do a little bit of a bonus tip, which is I found out recently about this kind of platform called Notebook LM. I'm sure other people have heard about it before me. I'm just a little bit slow to the game. But it's basically this AI tool to help you kind of learn better. And so you can upload your notes, you can upload summaries, you can upload articles, journals, images, whatever it might be. And basically what it does is it takes all that information in, and then you can choose how to take in that information it gives you formats like you can listen to a podcast, you can do a mind map, you can do a brief summary article of it, you can test yourself, you can make flashcards. And I think it's really cool because then you can experiment and try and see what works for you and see how you can learn better with this tool. And I know in the modern day age that AI, there's a lot of controversy around it. Just, a lot of people think that we as humans are learning our ability to critically think, which I definitely think is a valid concern. But I also think that AI is everywhere. I mean, so many companies are using it, and it's so important to kind of learn how to adapt because we always think, this is funny, that a new thing is scary and that it has all these repercussions, which, it might. But if you think about it, everything that we think is normal was novel in the past. I mean, the iPhone itself, that was a novel thing in 2010. And now it's so normal for us to all have a smartphone. So I think it's really important to kind of go into things with an open mind and see how it works for you and how you can utilize it to help you, not to harm you, not to take kind of the easy way out, but actually how to level up with it. And so I definitely encourage you guys to try out Notebook LM. I think it's a crazy tool and I think it's really good. And also when you use the quizzing, you are actively recalling, which I talked about as strategy number 1. And when you're using those flashcards, you're spacing it out and mixing it up, which is strategy number 2. And when you're testing out and experimenting all of these different skills, you're actually gaining a little bit more flexibility on how you're learning. So when your boss gives you, different formats, or when you're taking in information from articles, journals, flashcards, lectures, professors, mentors, whatever you're doing, you will be able to learn better because you're remaining flexible in your learning. So now I'm just going to do a quick recap and give you a quick checklist of everything that we've been through, because I know I've talked a lot about things in this episode and it's a lot of information to retain. So we're going to do a quick little recall of it to help us remember. So number 1 is test early. Recalling is so much more important than rereading. Number 2 is teach it. Explaining forces your understanding. Step 3 is space it out. Instead of doing one long increment, do 2 to 3 short sessions. Number 4 is mix it up, rotate throughout your information to remain flexible. Number 5 is rest intentionally. So sleep, or if you don't want to do that, you can do non-sleep deep rest like yoga nidra, or you can do kind of mindful meditations, things that are just, short mindfulness exercises that you can find on so many different apps like Insight Timer, Calm, whatever platform you use. Number 6 is kind of make it emotional. And this helps to kind of connect what you're learning and attach these things that you're learning to a personal goal or a stake. And that will help you retain that information for longer because it's more meaningful to you, because you have that intention and it's important to you. And this was proven by psychologist McNaugh about emotion actually helps create a stronger memory signal because you're attaching it to what you're learning. So basically, like, if I remember this, then I will get a promotion. Or if I remember this information, I'm going to get an A on my next test. Whatever it is, whatever personal goal or stake it is, it just helps you fundamentally feel that this information is important and that then you're going to retain it better. Even just actually saying this learning is important signals to your brain to remember it longer. So definitely a helpful little tip. And so basically, it's not about studying harder, it's about learning smarter. And so that Excel moment that I talked about in the beginning of the story where my mentor had just taught me and I couldn't remember a thing, it wasn't that I was dumb or missing a so-called learning style. It was just that I hadn't given my brain a chance to learn properly. And so you're not born a good learner, you become one. And you become one through curiosity and basically challenging yourself. It is hard to learn, and you have to embrace that hardness in order to grow. And so the question shouldn't be, am I smart enough? It should be, am I using the right strategies? And so the next time you're stuck, don't kind of ask, what is my preferred learning method so that I can improve my performance that way? No, ask, what can I test, space, or even rest today? Staying engaged gives you that room to grow. And so I just wanted to leave you with this message that you are not behind. You are just getting started on utilizing the right tools that help you grow and go on your path of the chaotic journey of building one's career in their 20s. And if this episode resonated with you, which I hope it did, and it gave you strategies to learn faster, retain information longer, and then hopefully apply them to whatever you're doing, definitely send it to a friend who needs it, because we're all on this journey together. Thanks so much for listening, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode. I'm so excited to see where you guys go. Bye!